So if people ask the question of, I'm trying to get jacked, can I just do one thing and not change it? The answer is yes, until the answer is no.
Having every muscle developed is potentially very good for a powerlifter. We know that the larger a muscle fiber is, the more force it can potentially produce.
For me, the biggest thing is, what's your advice for people training? And I always put fun in my top 5 tips. If you're not enjoying something, that's why a lot of people give up when it comes to fitness and challenges and all these, especially when you're new to the gym.
Is it true that we need to like push harder all the time? Because like, you know, it's I don't know, it's just an interesting thing. Like, I guess, you know, like, do we need to do more reps? Do we need more weight? Do we need like a different stimulus to grow? Or could somebody just kind of hang out in a certain area and continue to make progress, maybe look better? Can it get stronger doing similar weights, or do you always have to do like either like more reps or more overall volume or
like
more
continuous
weight?
Progressive overload forever?
Eventually I become God. That's why we're all here, right? Really good question. So there's a couple ways to answer this, but I will say a good way to think about it is there's like all the stuff you're able to do. Here's your maximum ability to do anything in one day. Like how many reps of squats can you really do until you collapse or some shit like that? And down here is you sitting in a chair, not even going to work out. The top, maybe 10% of that effort spectrum is where gains happen. So if you get to the top 7% and then you just decide not to change anything for a while, it takes a while for you to get so much more able that that top 7 dips into like the 5, 92.5, 90, 88.5.
You've talked about this before, so your capacity is continuing to kind of move.
Hopefully. It's like if you're getting stronger, then you should be exiting. So for example, if 100 pounds is challenging to you, can you get stronger using it? Yes. Then you're 102.5 pounds strong. Is 100 pounds still challenging? Yes, but marginally less so. So like how many months or weeks can you still train with 100 to get strong? Well, let's define strength as productive training in sets of 3 to 6 repetitions, and then hypertrophy everything north of that. You know what I'm saying? When you're doing like sets of 5 with 100 and it's challenging, it's close to failure, absolutely you're getting stronger. When it's sets of 6, a few weeks later, hey, you got stronger, sets of 6, right? When it's sets of 7, 8, 9, 10, a few months later, is that the most efficient way to get stronger? No, because the reps are too high, the load isn't good enough. So to answer your question of can I just keep doing the same thing and get stronger or get better at anything, the answer is absolutely yes for some time. But eventually that curve leaves you and you got to like do cooler shit, do more intense shit, elevate the stimulus so that you can continue to be challenged in that zone. It's almost like asking a similar question of like if you're a musical artist and you make a certain kind of sound that people really like to hear, can you just keep doing that formula? Yeah, for a while until that shit isn't cool anymore. And then you have to innovate. Like Madonna's been pretty good at like continuing to make herself more relevant. So you could say like, well, why don't you just stick to the formula that works from the 80s? Madonna, she'd be like, for a while it did, but then it didn't. So if people ask the question of, I'm trying to get jacked, can I just do one thing and not change it? The answer is yes, until the answer is no. And then you're not improving anymore. Can you imagine like you hire a coach and he's like, oh, you're not improving. This is going to be a fucking really difficult technical assignment for me to figure out how to make you better. And he's like, what have you been trying? You're like, nothing. I've just been doing the same shit for 4 years. He's gonna be like, holy fuck, this is the easiest shit I've ever done.
Yeah.
So, you know, but there is something there that some people have no problem going super fucking hard. And they maybe get so nervous and anxious about like, am I really doing a good enough job? And to those people I say, like, as long as you're getting some soreness, some pump for strength, like you feel really challenged, like if at some point in strength training, you get a few of these reps, you're going to continue to get stronger. The pace can be different depending on if you optimize. Your pace can be this strong like this, not optimize and just do a good job is like this, but you're still getting stronger over time.
Yeah.
If you're not challenging yourself or if your recovery, food, et cetera, is bad enough, you will quite clearly see that you're not getting stronger. And then if you're no longer getting stronger, bigger, whatever, then clearly you have to do something else. But you can coast for a while on regular shit. And if you're an overthinker and over warrior, just coast, just do the right stuff for a while. And at some point you may look back on a year and be like, what? I just got stronger this entire time. Why would I make things overcomplicated? Whereas if at some point, month 8, you stop getting stronger, it's time to overcomplicate. Which actually, like, you see this kind of comment on social media a lot. Like you throw some science at a motherfucker, like, hey, like, try this. And inevitably some asshole's like, fucking overcomplicate, bro. Just fucking lift and eat. I want to say like, oh, I understand you're stupid, but other people may be more intelligent and can actually consume this content. You know, like it's like seeing like, you know, technical analysis of military, like Russia versus Ukraine. But fuck that, just nuke them all. Like, hey, thanks a lot, Jim. You're the man. Kindly see yourself the fuck out of this conversation. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, we don't have to overcomplicate everything. If it works, great. But to those people that say like, fuck that, just eat and lift or whatever, like true until it's not enough. Like, can you imagine like not like take someone like Big Ramy, right? And he's like, hey, like, I wonder what kind of peaking protocol I should use with drugs and training and food and all this stuff. Can you imagine telling him like, don't overcomplicate it, bro, just eat and lift? He's like, no shit, motherfucker. I'm 345 at 8% body fat. You didn't think I've been doing that shit already? Like to win the Olympia, you got to do a little bit more than just do shit. So I think like TLDR, use as much science as you need to continue to progress. Yeah. And if you're not progressing anymore, maybe you're not working hard enough. Science can help you figure that out. Or maybe you're just not nuanced and complicated enough, which sucks if you're dumb and you can't figure that shit out. Hire a coach. But if you're sufficiently intelligent, yeah, some science sprinkled on that shit. You know, hard work and basics, sprinkle some science on it, and then you continue to get better.
On the idea of getting stronger, you made a video that
I've never made any videos.
You haven't. There's this one. I don't know why it's in my mind, but you made this video about naturals having to get stronger. So when I saw that, I was curious, like, does the extent that they can continue making progress, is it different from individuals who are on gear? Do they not have to worry about getting stronger as much as naturals do? Because I want to mention something that I noticed when I started focusing on strength training. From the time I was 13 to about 22, none of my training was focused on strength. I was just increasing volume because I also did sports at the time. And I wasn't focusing on increasing the strength of my squat, deadlift, etc. After I did my first few shows in my off season, I was like, okay, I'm bored. Let me get some powerlifting and let me get stronger. And noticed a big progression into, like, it was like that year.
You started gaining muscle.
I started getting, it was like newbie gains again. And I put on quite a bit of weight because I was getting stronger. And then I was like, oh, so all this stuff is easier because now I'm getting stronger and I'm getting bigger. And that was it's like a key unlocked for me. Sure. But do you think that individuals who are on gear, is that not as much of a concern?
I think it's as much of a concern, but individuals who get on gear have another variable to play with, and they can pay less attention to their training quality and training design and still make gains by either riding out however much gear has going for them, or incrementally increasing the gear when they reach problem areas. So someone's like, yeah, man, I really can't get my lower back to pop out. Trend goes from 500 to 700 next prep. Like, I did it. Like, okay. But underlying mechanisms are still the same. You know, if you are drug using or drug free, your ability to get stronger over time in sets of 5 to 30 repetitions is the easily the best correlate in the real world to show you that you're getting more muscular. Yeah. And if you think you've gotten more muscular, but your lifts haven't gone up for reps, it strains the imagination as to what really actually happened. It's like, you know, you guys ever like, see, this is more me talking shit. Like some bodybuilder will post on Instagram and it's like a before and after or a side by side. And they're like, I didn't get any stronger this off season, but I felt like I'm bringing more quality. And you're looking at the picture like, zoom in and out. And you're like, motherfucker, are you out of your mind? Or one of those like, I don't know which one's the better picture. Did you get weaker?
That sucks.
So if you track your reps and sets and how strong you are for reps, both seeking to increase the strength a little bit over time and using the strength as a barometer of am I doing a good job is a swell idea for everyone, drug free or not. A lot of the natty people will say, we just got to focus on strength. There's all that other shit like pump work doesn't work. That's actually bullshit. Pump work works for everyone. It's been vetted actually exclusively in naturals.
Can you explain pump work, by the way, for those?
So any kind of muscle growth training that results in a temporary cell swelling response for the muscles, aka the pump, the only reason to be alive, maybe, or it's like coming or something.
It's
whatever.
Like coming.
Look at my pump. So you know, I have a shitty Arnold impression. It's great. I mean, it's shitty. So the pump actually, so back in the day, they used to say that it was nothing. It was just blood. It was irrelevant. And especially in the last 5 years, there have been.
What is wrong with us? Why do we say stuff's irrelevant? You know, it's like it seems so obvious that it like does something. Your arms swell up, they get bigger, like right there on the spot. Oh, that doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Well, so I would categorize. I would go even further. There's two ways to say it. You could say, well, it's not really, there's no evidence that the pump makes you more jacked, which was true in the 90s. There was no evidence for it. But not having evidence for something is very different than there being evidence against it. Mm-hmm. So you say the pump doesn't do anything. And my retort was like, how do you know that? They're like, well, it's just cell swelling. I'm like, how do you know that's not mechanistically tied to growth? And they'd be like, what's mechanistically mean, you fucking nerd asshole? And then I would get punched in the face. I would begin to cry. And then I would do curls so that I never got hit in the face again. And my face got bigger, so now it's hard to punch.
Your face is very muscular.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So the pump has been shown in numerous studies that is cell swelling to actually be a trigger of hypertrophy. It actually grows muscle for you to get a pump. Mm-hmm. And also
I knew it.
Yeah. The metabolites, like all that, the painful burn stuff in the muscles that actually causes a pump. The metabolites themselves also grow muscle. And the production of tension over multiple repetitions through a large range of motion also causes a pump, and that tension also hypertrophies you. So not only is the pump actually causative of muscle growth, it's an excellent correlate of muscle growth. You try to figure a way out, how does that not apply? Well, hold on a sec. So off season, guys get huge ass pumps, right? They also grow a lot. Pre-contest, worse pumps. That's not an accident. That's not by accident. So having a pre-swollen cell already, tons of glycogen in it, being fresh. You guys know how if you're super fatigued, you actually can't get that great of a pump. But if you're fucking post-deload, you're like, oh my fucking God. So all that stuff adds up, and it turns out the pump actually works. So, if you're getting really great pumps, that's a probably pretty good sign that everything's going well in your life. But if you're not getting great pumps, it's terrible. And if you're drug-free, training that makes you progressively stronger while utilizing tension, metabolites, and things that result in a pump are all really great things to use. Yeah. Same thing for guys on gear. But again, the confounding factor is guys on gear can sometimes get away with real dumb shit just because they can just keep upping the dose. And they're like, how come pro? And a lot of times people try to learn from that, and they're learning from a mistake. So say, well, man, pro bodybuilders don't use full ROM. How come they're fucking big? You're like, well, it's two things. One, how do you know that if they didn't use full ROM, they'd be bigger? Second thing, this is going to be mean. This is a mean comment. Not all, but a significant fraction of high-level bodybuilders, they're not kind of people that you take advice from on anything. And it's easy to fanboy the fuck out of these people. You never met them, never talked to them, but you meet and talk to these motherfuckers and you're like, holy shit, you have no idea what's going on. I mean, like in your personal life as well as lifting. And you say like, what's the rationale for you doing curls like this or like that? And like, you know what I'm saying, man? Just getting after it. You're like, let me write that down. It's fucking brilliant. Einstein, Newton, that guy. Same, so Mount Rushmore of science right here. So a lot of times before looking up to people, maybe look if they have a modicum of intelligence. Because like they can't give you their genetics, right? Like I can't look at someone's bicep peaks and be like, I can has? You can ask, but maybe you can touch it. Maybe they'll let you rub your face on it.
They'll let you
ideally.
touch it.
Oh, yes,
they'll let you touch it.
Everything for a price in bodybuilding, of course. Yeah. But if you actually want to learn stuff from people, maybe try to see some YouTube videos of theirs if they sound like they've thought shit through. Now, some people are not very verbally oriented or even communicative, but they could have a very decent philosophy of training. Maybe at some point someone sort of gets that out of them. Or if you look at their training, you follow them on social media, maybe try to see if you can discern some kind of structure or pattern. Because if you can't discern a pattern, maybe there's not a pattern. And then maybe like when you ask the guy, like, so what do you think about best tricep exercises? Whatever dumb shit comes out of his mouth is not an intelligent assessment of the world. It's just like, well, I feel like XYZ. Like I could have fucking told you that. Thanks for nothing. Yeah. And you ask, why is that guy jacked? 15 years of lifting, amazing genetics. He was that guy in high school that you were like, how old are you kidding? 38? Fuck, you have a mustache. We're in freshman year of high school. That's probably you guys, huh?
That was Nsima for sure.
Nsima was beating up adult men.
Nsima got checked for his birth certificate.
Yeah, when I was 16 playing soccer, the parents on the other team were like, I want that kid's birth certificate.
You know you're Nigerian when. He was also a medical doctor at the time already.
Do you guys know that one?
Yeah.
No? You talking about the black kid who was like, he had a clinic?
No. I was referencing nothing specific. I've never met a single Nigerian that wasn't an exceptional athlete, medical doctor, or computer engineer.
Yeah.
Maybe chemical systems engineer or something.
Yeah,
I've met a few of those.
It's in the culture. Doctor, lawyer, engineer.
Unbelievable. Actually, I was in the hospital once, and I had a doctor who was Nigerian. I was like, can I ask you like sort of a personal question? And she's like, Jesus Christ. Now, she didn't say that. She was like, yes. I was like, what's it like if you're a Nigerian family and you decide not to go to school, like to college? And she literally did the same thing you just did. She's just like, that's not a thing that happens. I was like, well, like pretend. And she's like, there would be a 30-person extended family sit-down intervention to make sure you went to school. She thought I was asking a different
That's what
question.
happened
to me. There you go. You went to school. And they're like, shut up. What she thought I was asking was, what if they go for a non-STEM degree? So she's like, if you try to like major in English, they will still sit down with you and be like, are you sure about this?
No art, no philosophy, no nothing like that.
That doesn't bring home the bacon.
No, it's not a real degree.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'm curious about this. We have Andrew Milanichev in the gym.
Uh-huh.
When he came into the podcast the first time, he said something that was really dope, and that I was like, I totally agreed with. He said that when individuals start training, that they should start by building a base of volume and a base of muscle before they get into strength training and moving really heavy loads. Mm-hmm. He said that people should do that for maybe 3 or 4 years before they start lifting heavy. Mm-hmm. It kind of sounds like, unless I'm wrong, that's kind of what you ended up doing with, like, you were focused on volume and bodybuilding and building muscle, and then you moved into the strength stuff. Am I correct?
Yep. Yeah, so it was kind of a weird trajectory for me because when I first started out, I wanted to be a bodybuilder, and I started training and stuff, and then I met my undergraduate roommate had some records in the APF and started getting more into the heavier stuff. But I still I wanted to be a bodybuilder, like I wanted to have a lot of muscle and everything. And I mentioned tearing my bicep and that how that was kind of the end of it. But even before then, I was starting to realize I'm better at being strong than I am being big. Yeah, right, because I'd always been a little guy. So that's just my training naturally started to gravitate towards strength. And then after I did tear the bicep, I was like, I'm not even gonna worry about how it looks. I'm just gonna try and get really strong.
But it seemed like you did have a good base before you moved into powerlifting.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
And what
absolutely.
what would your suggestion be for somebody who wants to get into lifting? Like, Mike, I'm curious, do you even know if you have a propensity for strength if you've never really lifted before to produce force? You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and you can't possibly know that. So the way I suggest people get into lifting, when they're first starting out, I think they should go for the simplest thing, which in my opinion, one of those 5x5 programs, there's like strong lifts and Texas method, those types of programs.
5-3-1.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's what I started with.
You're performing the same, major compound lifts week in, week out. You're getting really good at those. You're starting to figure out, okay, how do I move my body around in the gym? Once you have that, then I think you should have a fairly decent amount of muscle. You should be pretty comfortable with lifts. Then you can start, trying to focus a little bit more on strength, see if you can kind of build that strength base up. And like, if I'm just going to throw out numbers, and obviously it depends on your body size and everything, but like the basic starting point, 400 squat, 300 bench, 500 deadlift. And if you want to say based on body weight, it's 1.5 times body weight bench, double body weight squat, 2.5 body weight deadlift. Once you're there, then you can decide, okay, do I want to push strength? Do I want to push size more? But regardless, no matter which path you go down, to really be the best, you're going to have to push both at different points in your career.
Yeah. So let's explain that a little further. So getting into those ranges that you just discussed, what will that do for you if you get towards that strength level? What will that do for you in terms of your options when you're venturing down the path of bodybuilding?
So that's a great question. In my opinion, and I don't have any research to back this up, I'm not a huge research guy, despite the fact that I spent 6 years in grad school. I think when you look at the top bodybuilders, they're really, really strong. Whether or not they train like that, they're really, really strong. We trained with Derek Lunsford one time, and the majority of his training is kind of like pump work, that Phil Heath, Kai Green type stuff. But he can put up 150 dumbbells like they're nothing, like if he wants to. So I think there's an absolute level of strength that's required for each individual person to be able to put on a lot of size, right? And that's well above those 1.5 to 2.5 numbers. But the thing is, the fact that they're capable of it doesn't mean they have to train for it all that time, right? So there's trade-offs there.
There's also some limitations in bodybuilding if you're not mobile. Like I've noticed that guys that are more flexible, that can move better, they just tend to be able to recruit the muscle fibers better. And you can make it an argument for the guys that are stronger as well. Someone that can bench 500 pounds knows how to recruit their muscle fibers really well with 275 pounds. They don't really need to push it or do anything crazy. They can use those weights. And then same thing with the mobility aspect. For me, like when I was trying to grow my chest for some bodybuilding stuff that I did, it was hard for me to get those deep angles of really pushing the elbows up and driving the elbows out. Like, powerlifting, you try to keep them in and you try to protect yourself in a different way. But, I think mobility is a huge factor of bodybuilding that's not really discussed much.
That was the first thing Taylor said to me when we started training together. He's like, look, dude, if you want to be a good bodybuilder, you got to be able to move. Like, you got to be training like an athlete.
You're like, forget this.
Your sport is showing your body on stage. And if you can't put your body in the right position, you're never going to do well. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, even something like a side chest pose or that tricep pose. If you're stuck, that if you can't rotate your hips, the way that you need to, you can't show your body the way that you need to.
Even if it's not just stuck in a range of motion, your muscle might be bound up or not activating, or like you're saying, it's not firing, so you can't actually, like lats, for example. You go to show your lats, they might be a little tucked behind, they can't fully come forward.
Yeah.
We've kind of found that reflects on your squat and your front rack position and everything that would require that front lat motion. You can kind of see how to fix your mobility from both
Don't
ways.
be calling me out on my own show here. This is embarrassing. I wasn't expecting you guys to do that.
Beef. Power Project family, it is grilling season. Now, I really don't know much about grilling since I use an air fryer at home. My boy Andrew does, though. So, since it's grilling season, it's time to get your hands on some Piedmontese beef. We love those glizzies. We love that beef. Andrew, tell them more about it.
Yeah, guys. So like you mentioned, they do have those glizzies.
Hey, yo!
For those that don't know, that's just a hot dog, but it's all beef hot dog and it's amazing. My favorite thing to smoke is their prime rib, though. And, it's grilling season. So dust off those grills, dust off those smokers, and head over to cpbeef.com, and at checkout, enter promo code POWER to save 25% off your order. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Get your glizzy gobbler on. You alluded to natural versus enhanced quite a bit already. And we know that a lot of drugs help you recover much better, which is partially why a lot of these guys can get bigger, because they're just recovering so much faster than the guy that doesn't take anything. So I guess what different factors to guys that don't take any drugs? What can they do in terms of, I guess, their programming, their nutrition? Obviously, you mentioned peri-workout shakes and stuff. What can they do to recover better so that they can also make a lot of progress over time?
Yeah, well, let me start with what is not a good idea.
Okay.
Because I hear a lot of chatter on YouTube and everywhere that, well, if you're natural, you can't train hard. The only guys that should be training really hard are the guys on gear. Okay, I think we're all in agreement that it's harder to build muscle naturally. So explain to me why training easier is going to help you grow faster. So first of all, don't buy into that line, because that's crap. That's straight crap. Now, I mean, if you look at, like, for example, muscle protein synthesis, and when you train, like I said, 24 or 48 hours, for a muscle, it's turned on. Here's what you don't want. So let me go with kind of basic number 2. When a muscle is recovered, train it. So if you train legs on Monday and you're into this, so I'm going to start with the natural side first. So if you train legs on Monday and, it's been 48 hours or 72 hours, what have you, and you're ready to train them again, then do it. Don't wait like 3 or 4 days. You're leaving gains on the table, as we like to say. Right? So train them when it's recovered, first of all. I don't think it's a good idea to train a muscle when it's not recovered. Okay? Now, let's say the muscle's really sore. You've got a couple different approaches. You can wait longer to train it, which I think is a fine option, or you can pull back on your intensity, so you're not as sore. That you could argue that's a good idea or a bad idea. It could go either way. But here's the other thing about anabolics. So they have a massive effect on your cortisol. Just like how anabolics will attach to this androgen receptor, and then it goes to your DNA and it fires up the protein synthesis. So these guys on gear, their protein synthesis is firing all the time, 24/7, 7 days a week. That's why you can get away with training something once a week. For naturals, that's not the case. I'm not saying you can't make progress that way. I'm just saying for most natural guys, it's probably not the best idea. You want to take advantage of the muscle protein synthesis, but then when it stops, you can't let the muscle just sit for 4 or 5 days. You got to train it. But anyways, so cortisol kind of does the same thing, attaches to a receptor, talks to it kind of occupies it, so cortisol doesn't run wild. There were many thoughts back in the 90s that the biggest effect from steroids came from the anti-catabolic effect, and so much so that we used to use this drug called cytodrine. You remember that one, Mark?
I've heard of it before, yeah.
Yeah, we used to use that. It didn't work the way we thought it would, but that was a big thought. So anyways, let me get back to my point. So the guys who are training natural, they don't have this this advantage of kind of suppressing cortisol. So what happens when you're training just crazy hard and you're doing high volume? What goes up? Your cortisol levels will start to go up. So then you have a really hard time recovering. So you've just got to set your programming up so that you can recover from it. And what I'm not saying is to not train hard. I'm just saying you may need to manage your volume, because higher and higher and higher volumes for a natural, it's a double-edged sword, because if you start cranking all that cortisol, then these guys get real tired, they're worn out, they start getting weaker. So you just got to be very precise in how you program. And even saying, but having said that though, remember, everybody's different. People tolerate different amounts of stress. So at the end of the day, it's still the principle of individuality. You still have to experiment. There's not a single scientific study I've read that I just took black and white and that's what I'm doing. Experiment. You've got to experiment. This is the beauty of experience, is you learn these things as you go. And 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and then you start to figure out, hopefully, what's working for you and what's not working for you.
We have a tendency to look at what everybody else is doing. And so you might see somebody just got done doing 455 on the flat bench for reps and they got a huge chest. Now that's your focus. But meanwhile, you're plenty proficient at doing dumbbells. You're plenty proficient at doing incline bench. You go and watch that video and you go to try to do the same thing, and there goes your shoulder, there goes your pec.
Yep.
You regress backwards 8 weeks because you can't figure out how to bench the same way as this other person. But I don't know why we do that so much. Our intuition and the things that we're already pretty good at, we're like not grateful enough for. It's like, man, I'm already good at these 5 or 6 exercises. I don't need 10 more. It'd be nice to maybe open up the playbook once in a while, have a couple extra fun things to try. But staying in your lane is probably the most important thing.
I absolutely agree.
And I'm curious, how did you when you started focusing on bodybuilding and getting bigger, how did you work on your mobility? Were you just slowly increasing your range of motion for these movements and what was comfortable? Did you do any purposeful like stretching or anything like that? What'd you do?
So I put on a lot of size really fast.
Yep.
And in some ways that worked against me. So
why did that happen?
So I had been, let's see, I started in bodybuilding, not classic physique, right? Started that right after my first classic physique national show, which was August of 2019. Or maybe it was the last day of July, right around there. Before then, I had spent a year prepping for classic, right? So my weight cap, my height is 190. Before that, I had spent a year and a half trying to stay 181 for bodybuilding. So I'd essentially been dieting for 2.5 years straight, like starvation dieting. So after that, when I was trying to put on size, I probably tripled my caloric intake at least. And
to what? From where to about where?
1,800 to whatever 3 times that is. 5,000.
5,400. Jesus.
So I, and I doubled my drug use, right? Because to stay 181, stay 198, 190, I couldn't be using much. Like if I was taking 500 milligrams of test, I was out of my weight class.
Right.
So by the time I did all that at the same time. Coming off my contest show, had my contest rebound, 2.5 years of dieting, new drugs. So I put on, I went from 184 on stage. I don't want to give an exact date because I can't promise, but it was by like January, right? So we have August, September, October, November, December, 6 months. I was 260. So and
between not these two.
No, so those are both in contest shape. I was 260 off season, right?
Jesus, man.
But it was still
look at the confidence of the pose to the right, and how he opened up a little bit more as opposed to the left, and then just look at the density of like his legs and shoulders. It's fucking wild.
So yeah, if I could get my legs and shoulders and chest up a little bit more, I'd be in good shape.
You said your legs, your shoulders, your
legs are okay.
Your legs are
chest and shoulders and triceps. Yeah.
When people were seeing a lot of the positives, I was focusing too much on what I could do to look better. And then looking at other people on Instagram and going, oh, I wish I had that guy's physique. That guy looks a lot more impressive. And, I in a weird way, because you want to be better, you would never settle. And I think we were told that that's a good thing.
Yeah.
When you go, oh, I'm happy with how I look, that means you are not progressing anymore. You're not trying anymore. So in my mindset, it was, I need to look better.
I saw a guy today at the coffee shop order a muffin. And I was just like, that guy does not give a fuck.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, I would like to trade places with that guy.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice that he just like, fuck it, man, I'm getting a muffin.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that because I had a muffin for breakfast today.
Are we surprised though? A muffin?
Like, of course. No, but the more I think of it, the old me would not have a muffin because it's not cheat day, right? I used to have cheat days, so I would never touch a muffin unless it was a cheat day.
Cheat day, it's legal.
Yeah, you know, I wouldn't go to restaurants where I wouldn't care what's on the menu because I want to go to a restaurant. I wouldn't go, oh, what's the less damaging food on this menu? I can have a burger whenever I want to now. I couldn't back then. But exactly the same thought process you have is the same I have now when I see people just, I'll have a burger today, I'll have a milkshake. And I'm like, even some part of me, I like to pretend I don't care and I would eat whatever I want. That's a lie. I still I restrict certain foods, you know.
But there's an aspect that's good to that.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's still, I still allow myself to enjoy the simple things like have a muffin now and then. That's fine. And you do see people who aren't in the best of shape and they don't care. And before I used to almost feel bad for them or sorry for them. And now I'm like, I wish I had that mindset. They have a great mindset because they don't care what other people think. We like to think that we don't sometimes. But in the back of our heads, we do.
We're placing too much of our own judgment and our own rules on somebody else that doesn't even know us.
Yeah.
And they don't even know us.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. So I look at them and think, if they don't care, who am I to judge them for not caring? Like, why are we so angry sometimes at people's choices? You know, and I find that weird. I think maybe I'm probably... But back in the day, I would care a lot. Be like, why don't you care about how you look? And why don't you care about what you eat? And unless they asked you for help, or unless they asked for your opinion, why are you giving it to them?
You start giving them a seminar and calories in, calories out. Like, this is the way that muffin's going to work in your body.
Yeah. You know, people get very angry and very passionate. And I used to be the same when it came to people who didn't do anything that wasn't bodybuilding. You know, I used to think bodybuilding was the only way to train, you know, and running.
Same here.
Yeah. I used to laugh at people who did running. What are you doing? Running around in circles. Go to the gym. Lift some weights. I never understood people who didn't want to have muscles. And, you know,
No, seriously.
like, how do you not want to be muscly?
My son came home from the gym one day and he's like, what do people that don't work out do?
Yeah.
I was like, you made it, son. I just gave him a big hug.
Yes, we coming to meet and let's go. But Obi, question about, because like, with bodybuilding, I assume being the way that you started getting into lifting and then you started focusing on the way you look, I can understand the same thing you're saying. Because when I did shows, I did a bunch of shows and I stopped because I found jiu-jitsu, which allowed me to focus on performance. But one thing that I found when I started focusing on performance was I also wasn't focused purely on the way I looked. Like with shows, judges say your triceps aren't big enough.
Yeah.
You need more lines in your glutes. You need a deeper lower back. Even though you probably look great, with the sport of bodybuilding, it does come down to the way you look.
Exactly.
And with that, every single day, you're going to be focusing on, are my triceps bigger yet? Are they improving? Are they improving? Every fucking day.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, there are some people who've been bodybuilding for decades who I guess can manage that well. But for most people, that doesn't seem to be a good place for your mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. It's like you said, you probably looked incredible to most of us, but the judges will say to you, yeah, your triceps could be bigger, you know, your quads could be more shredded, and that in a way plays in your mind, and it can keep it becomes more of a negative factor of how you see yourself. You know, that's why I said when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw, oh, I'm shredded, I'm aesthetic. I saw, oh, he needs bigger shoulders. His legs need to be bigger. His hamstrings need to be a lot more shredded.
Yeah.
So you start to see the negatives in the way you look. And a lot of us don't think about how that impacts us in our daily lives, so when I did start doing some CrossFit, it was all by accident, actually, because I was a CrossFit hater. I thought CrossFit was a joke.
So you've gotten your labs done, whether it's 6 months ago or a year ago, and you want to know where things are at, but you don't want to get a full panel again. That's why I've partnered with Merrick Health, owned by Derek, for More Plates, More Dates, and we have something called the Checkup Panel. This is an affordable panel with 55 different labs that'll allow you to see all those different biomarkers, and you can get this channel every month or every 2 months, whatever frequency you like, but it'll give you all the specific labs that you want to know so that you can make sure that you're moving in the right direction for your specific hormones. Andrew, how can they get their hands on it?
Yes, that's over at marek.health.com/power project. That's MAREK health.com/power project. There you guys will see our checkup panel. Load that into your cart, and at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off of that panel. Again, marek.health.com/power project. Links in the description as well as the podcast show notes. Yeah, would you guys say, I mean, this is for everybody, like, gonna bring up a very obvious athlete, but Russ Swole started out powerlifting. He's going to start dipping into bodybuilding.
Started off with football, actually, before that. But yeah,
I know him as a powerlifter. And that's, you know what I mean? So, and he's going to fucking crush I don't want to, jinx anything, but he's going to destroy a lot of people when he steps on a bodybuilding stage. So is that like, if somebody does want to be a bodybuilder and they're so hyper focused on bodybuilding, like maybe they should start off with powerlifting, or at least, I don't know, dip into powerlifting as a regular thing instead of just, nope, I'm a bodybuilder, I'm going to eat chicken and rice and do bicep curls.
So I think this goes back to that absolute strength thing that I was talking about before. Some people are just going to be naturally gifted, and they're going to look at weights and they're going to grow, right? They're going to do that pump work and their muscles going to get bigger each time they train. But those people are going to know it. Right? They're not going to be the ones who are watching this podcast asking me for advice. Those people can do whatever they want. The people who are really struggling, who are like, man, I'm doing all these sets and reps and I'm not getting anywhere. Those are the people who need to really focus on strength and build up that level where then they can come back to the lighter work and grow from it.
The other thing too is, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
The other thing too is the not specializing too early. By that I mean specializing all the way in powerlifting or all the way in bodybuilding. How many times have you seen local powerlifters, they're competing meet after meet, just hitting the bench, squat, deadlift, and they're not really getting that much better meet to meet. So you almost kind of cap and stall out your progress, and you'll see those plateaus if you go all in on one direction. But if you develop fully as an athlete, reach that full development, and then start to specialize, that's kind of how you avoid those plateaus.
And I want to piggyback off of what both of you guys just said, because like when I started lifting when I was 13, but my focus in training was just building muscle and bodybuilding. I only started focusing on strength training when I was like 20 or 21. But when I started focusing on strength training and moving the big three and getting stronger with those movements, it's like I had a new boost of muscle gain because I was getting stronger. And when I was getting stronger with these lifts, I started busting through plateaus when it came to my bodybuilding lifts because I was absolutely stronger. And it's like, it's something that, like you mentioned, athletes should try to get both in. It's like you don't have to do singles, but moving fives, threes, fives, etc., that can make a big difference in terms of somebody's muscle progression. It's crazy. Yeah.
In terms of bodybuilding, do you think a regular bench press is a great movement, or like where do you kind of stand? I know, like, I guess it's like really individual thing, but
actually, with what you said earlier about the angles, elbows, I think it could be just fine of a movement if you're having that exposure on the pecs, but you're not going to get a full stretch in the muscle if you're using other muscles to.
Right, if you're benching like a power lifter, you might be avoiding actually using the full potential of the chest.
So that's the problem, right? If you're benching like a power lifter where your shoulders are in a safe position, then you're not really exposing your chest to the full load. If you're benching like a bodybuilder where you have a lot of internal rotation, your elbows are flared, most big guys aren't going to have the mobility for that. And that's going to put them in a dangerous position where they're at risk of tearing a pec. So it's hard for me to say that, yes, that's a good movement for bodybuilders. Instead, I'm going to kind of bullshit a little bit and say that whatever strength movements you pick, you have to practice them enough that you can hold that perfect technique before you load them heavily. Because otherwise it doesn't matter whether it's a bench or a squat or a
machine
curl.
press.
Yes, exactly. You're risking it by pushing those weights.
I love, because you said that like powerlifters can take a lot from bodybuilders and vice versa. So specifically to that, what can powerlifters take from bodybuilding to improve themselves at powerlifting, and then what can bodybuilders take from powerlifting to improve themselves as bodybuilders?
Well, from a bodybuilder's perspective, we focus on maximally developing every single muscle. You want a complete physique. And having every muscle developed is potentially very good for a powerlifter. We know that the larger a muscle fiber is, the more force it can potentially produce. So there's no downside to having bigger muscles, to having bigger muscle fibers. And bodybuilders generally do a pretty good job with training everything. There's a point where it gets to just be too much for a powerlifter. But I think, like for instance, Chuck would do a lot of assistance work, when I was over there. And Chuck looked more like a bodybuilder. He developed different than the other guys because he was doing so much kind of bodybuilding work, really. And then from a powerlifting perspective, there was a couple things I always really liked. And it wasn't just lifting heavy weight. I mean, that's cool and that's needed, but that wasn't the only thing. There's a real emphasis on form with powerlifters. And what I always appreciated about powerlifters is you could be powerlifting for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and they're always finding flaws in mechanics and always working to make things better. And I just always thought, like, if you apply that mindset to bodybuilding, just making everything work at its absolute best, I think it would be an awesome thing. So, it wasn't just a lot of people assume I just mean doing lots of bench presses and shoulder presses. Not just that. I mean, that's cool, but bodybuilders have been doing that stuff forever too. To me, I just love how powerlifters analyze and they're meticulous about how they train and how they execute movements. Because a lot of bodybuilders aren't like that. They don't really get that deep into an understanding of movement. And I think for you to become your best as a bodybuilder, you find movements that you can get to that level where you feel them that good. And the more advanced you get, as Mark mentioned earlier, the more you can kind of connect with that muscle and your mind-muscle connection and so forth. So when you can actually find a routine and exercises that you can connect with like that, now you've just enhanced your abilities as a potential as a bodybuilder big time. And I did that with my back, for example. I really struggled with back development. And I was following the Lee Haney routine for Muscle and Fitness. I did my bent over barbell rows. I did my chins. I love Lee Haney. So I was trying to do everything he did. But guess what? It didn't really work for me. I'm not saying those are bad exercises. I'm just saying there were other exercises that came along that I connected with better, that I could feel better. And then boom, all of a sudden my back started growing and eventually it became a real strong body part. But that kind of mindset is what, so that's how I think they kind of complement each other.
What was the intensity like when you were at Westside Barbell? Was that, I'm sure as a longtime bodybuilder, you were probably already bringing it and you're probably already working very hard. And also the environment back then in the commercial gyms were different. Everyone was pretty intense, at least from what I remember. But still, was it a little bit of a culture shock when you walked in and the music was cranking and people were bleeding all over the place and stuff like that?
Not really, because the World Gym I trained out was the same way.
Right. Yeah, you don't see that in commercial gyms anymore.
No. But even at the World Gym, we had the deadlift platforms. We had the chalk bowl back there. The Metallica was blasting every Saturday morning. I mean, it wasn't that different. I just appreciated Louis. I think just because I got to it was motivational for me because of who I was surrounded by. Like I would see crazy stuff. Like you remember Kenny Patterson, right?
Absolutely.
I remember Kenny doing like a lying dumbbell tricep extension with like 100-pound dumbbell.
Jesus.
And I'm just sitting there watching it. And like George Halpert, remember George. I mean,
628 raw bench. 628-pound raw bench press.
Yeah.
At 198.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. Yeah. So those guys, I mean, I'm like, that's motivational to be around people that strong. And you know how we used to go out to the garage at Louis, or not at Louis, but he had a garage that we all went out and benched at on Sundays. And so there was 3 benches. And on the first bench, you had the 4 strongest guys. We had lots of Kenny Pattersons. And then the second bench, you had the kind of medium guys. And on the third bench, you had the guys like me. I was bottom of the barrel. So, I was on that third bench. Usually I was there with Joe McCoy. Joe was doing well over 500 at 181. Arnold Coleman was on that bench. So I was like the weakling of the group. And so it was motivating for me to see these animals training. I had the intensity. I had that from day one. But to see these guys going that hard with that kind of weight, I mean, honestly, it just motivated the heck out of them.
I'm pretty sure for a long time you're pretty big on naps, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think it's like a post-workout, right? You come home from the gym, you have your post-workout shake. I don't know if you have a food too.
When you're doing power bodybuilding.
Oh. Shake, food, boom, sleep.
Mm-hmm.
How much, an hour, or just do it?
It was a fall asleep, wake up, whatever it was.
About 30 minutes.
It could be 15. It could be that little Peter
How long
Pan.
did you do that? I mean, you've been doing that.
Still do it. I still do the nap.
Those gains set in.
Yeah, I get the workout in. I get home, have my meal. And understand, the way I'm dieting right now, if you guys are confused, it's not how I diet all year. No. I stay off season 9 months out of the year. I believe that for me, I need to, if I want to continue to do what I'm doing, I need to be in a surplus, not in a deficit. For me. And I also have to eat with her. She eats like a horse.
I'm hungry.
You said 300 carbs, right?
300 grams of carbs.
Didn't you say you've been out of the gym for a little while too?
I did. I decided to. So he got in amazing shape, and we set up all these photo shoots and filming and so forth. So I said, you know
we
what?
didn't even talk about that yet.
Yeah, I said, I'm going to take off from the gym completely, not work out. I got off I'm still eating through the day, like meals, but I mean pizza every night with Titan, and we having, in and out and like all that kind of good stuff. But I haven't worked out. I haven't worked out in
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
4 weeks now.
Yeah. And the body feels good. You know what's mind blowing?
Yeah.
My body likes it. I took this time off, and I don't
So
know
hold
what
on,
to
you
expect.
took 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You're eating carbs,
Yeah.
pizza and stuff.
Yeah.
Can we see an ab?
An ab?
Yeah. Can we see an ab shot?
Yeah. You can see
Pull a little
Oh,
bit
you
right
go
there.
with double
That's good.
bicep?
That's good right there.
Holy
shit.
Yeah, look incredible.
Turn that way.
Fucking wild. Get right next to Mike. Right there. There you go. And Titan's how old?
Look at her. Dude, I don't get those shoulders and biceps, man. Like,
What?
I always say Titan takes after mama.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's just my body loved the time off, the calorie intake, and people don't realize that you need that.
So what happens to you guys? Do you get those questions? Hey, I'm taking time off, so I'm going to be relaxed on my diet.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
never been me.
Oh yeah, people do.
Why? Why
or,
do they do that?
Or someone has an injury and they're like, "Yeah, I decided to say fuck it," and it's like, no, that's when you turn it up on your diet.
Oh my gosh.
Go the other way.
I'm messing up. Someone passed in the family. That's when you need us. That's when it's not when I'm getting ready for a show. That's easy.
Yeah.
You got a show. Like I got ready for this movie, and they said you got this much time to get ready and sliced. I said done. It's like one of those things. Can you ride a horse for the movie? Of course I can. Do you know how to sword fight? Of course I do. I learned with Mark in the bathroom. So, no, it's like you tell me the time to get ready, and I'll get ready. And I was off season, so it was working so well. But people, they when one thing's bad, the whole ship sinks.
That's hard to recover from.
So what mentally can you guys say with all these people you're talking to? Because you just talked to this guy and he was talking about the mindset and how you breaking yourself down lowers your testosterone and breaks your body down. Number one killer is stress.
Number one killer is stress.
So what do you guys tell these people that go, hey, I injured myself? What are some advice you give those guys?
I immediately tell people focus on what you can do. And what you can't do, you can't do. You can't do it at the moment.
I'd drop this right now if I
You know
could.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's not available to you right now. Be grateful that you can still go in the gym and
When'd you
train
learn it?
your arms and probably through professional wrestling. It's probably when I started to learn that, because I remember like my neck and like just weird shit would hurt. And I was like, but what can I train? I'm like, my whole body does not feel great. Probably feels like first couple weeks of jiu-jitsu, especially if you're going hard with it. Just, whole body was pretty stiff, but I'm like, I don't really want to train legs, but they feel fresh enough. I think I can train those. So I'd always just focus in on what I could do.
For me, the biggest thing is now I go, what's your advice for people training? and I always put fun in my top 5 tips. If you're not enjoying something, you will. That's why a lot of people give up when it comes to fitness and challenges and all these, especially when you're new to the gym.
What about with food? Can you do that with food too?
I think there's some aspects with food and dieting. When you are trying to diet down with food, there is some sacrifices you will have to make. Absolutely, because we can lie and go, oh, you can eat whatever you want as long as within your macros. Technically, you can, but if you already have issues with self-control when it comes to food, you do need to set that discipline. That's why a lot of people see me and I eat the way I want. I go to restaurants all the time and like, how do you eat like this? I'm like, well, I don't do this all the time. I already have that discipline. And I had to have that discipline when I started to diet down and make sure that I had the basics and learned the basics of food and how macros and calories worked. And also just learning to that self-control. Because if you don't have that self-control to start with, then saying to someone, oh, as long as it fits your macros, you can do whatever you want. That's hard for them to then learn how to control, that impulse of, oh no, then that means I can have an Oreo cookie for the whole day because technically it fits my macros. Well, where's the nutritional value in that food? So I always tell people to learn, especially how you can make good, healthy, nutritional choices or, before, then after a while, you can then go into whatever fits your macros.
Power Project family, your normal shoes are making you weak. This is why you partner with Vivo Barefoot Shoes, because they have a wide toe box, they're flat, and they're flexible. So with every single step you're taking, if you're taking a 10-minute walk outside, or when you're working out in the gym, your feet are able to do what they're supposed to do in this shoe. They have tons of options for hiking, running, training in the gym, chilling and relaxing, casual shoes for if you're out on a date. You need to check them out. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, and you guys will receive 15% off your order automatically. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
Question. When you were younger,
right?
Because I'm one of those people who I ended up picking up the habit of fasting. We all did. We don't do it every day,
right?
But it's something that is in our toolbox because now we're not like, we have to eat all the time.
Right.
When we're feeling a little hungry, we're not angry about it, right? But when it comes to eating, we here can all eat a lot of food.
Right.
If you say, hey, you're having an Oreo, but you have the whole thing in front of me, I'm the type of person who before, I'll just eat all 3 sleeves. Because I can do that. And then I can eat more after that. I'm a person who can eat a lot. So were you someone who can put down a lot of food, or did you have a struggle putting down a lot of food?
No, I was, I loved food. I still do. Yeah. But I didn't have self-control. So, I watched a lot of TV. I was more of an introvert, so I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, and TV was my friend. WWE was like, hey, I wanted to look like one of my favorites was The Undertaker and Kane because they were weird.
All their brothers.
Yeah. I liked the weird people who were hench.
Yeah.
So I wanted to look hench, but also I liked the fact that they were a bit weird. And that's why I actually started bodybuilding, because I was like, I want to look like a wrestler. I thought that it was unachievable until I saw someone, this time I lost a lot of weight. I used to do a lot of running, and then I went to, I was feeling more confident. So I was going out after working I used to work in Selfridges or in a shop. And after working there, me and my friends would go out and then we'd go to the bar. And, that was when I was a lot more confident. Yeah. And there was this dude just standing there like I don't dance. I'm too muscly and I'm too swole. So.
I got this stick up my ass. I can't move.
Exactly.
It's impossible, I feel like, for him to get injured because he trains really, really smart. I see him going into the exercise, and I could see how his brain works, the form. Like, there's days when he goes in, like the other day, and I don't know what we started doing, and he goes, that doesn't feel right. We go into a different exercise.
Yes.
It does not move. I'm not going to do it. Let's go.
Why are you so stubborn to stay in something if your body's really shutting it down?
Because he's been in a deficit. You were fasting
so
then before.
You did your first show. Can you explain to them what that feels like the last 2 days? Where the water comes out.
Yeah, the last couple days.
Your fascia gets stretched because you're adding in the carbs, but then
You
Yeah,
cramping, everything.
The last few days are so difficult that it messes with you for like maybe about 2 weeks afterwards,
right.
especially if you're not conditioned to it. So I had no idea like what was going to come. People try to warn me. They're like, hey, a couple days after, you're going to feel a little weird. You're going to be like, you might even be like depressed and stuff like that. But I had no idea. I just didn't care about anything. I thought I was going to be happy because the contest was over. I thought I'd be pumped because I did well. And my wife's like, hey, yeah, let's go do this. And she's like, you want to go to this favorite restaurant? And like, I'm like, I don't care. Like I just didn't. I didn't have
weird.
The energy didn't hit me back yet again.
How strong did you feel when you walked on stage? Not very strong.
No,
compared to a powerlifting meet.
No.
Now imagine that's my approach. So when I did that whole water depletion and everything, and I didn't even carb up for it. I fasted for it. And that's the 405 that I wanted to see. Can I still get this? And I think the main thing is because I started at 9 and I started powerlifting, that I have made the connective tissue so strong that the muscle will never override it. And that was, I think, the main thing for the injuries. And it's like I always talk about a wrestler will tear up a bodybuilder. A 180-pound wrestler will throw around a 250-pound bodybuilder because of connective tissue, not because how they visually look. Very few guys in the UFC look good. This last heavyweight fight, oh my gosh, did you see?
I saw those guys,
It was a pre-fight.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk to some of these tabloid guys and go, hey, are you better cardiovascular than this guy? He's 5'9", 270. Are you better cardiovascular? Because you better not say you are. Because there's nobody better cardiovascular than those guys.
Oh, right.
And just because they visually look like, oh my gosh, this is a Pillsbury Doughboy. Physically, he's healthy as anything.
Yeah.
5-minute round going in jiu-jitsu or MMA. I mean, it's tough. They don't comprehend that. So my point is that I set up the connective tissue knowing that that's going to keep me healthy for a lifetime. I can get muscle or lose muscle. That's nutrition. And people miss that part.
You never like threw out your back or anything? Or
So
I get tweaks.
to answer your question completely, he also does a lot of preventative stuff. So like he did PRP. He wasn't injured. We put it on YouTube.
I do things now.
Was that like, where'd you do the PRP?
I did it in my back and my knees. I'm trying to do preventative
I want to
stuff
get
now.
better. I want to get stronger. I want to feel better. And you did after, but it's like he does stuff that other people only do if
they get
injured.
hurt. Why do they wait till they get injured?
Right.
Like,
So I went and did that, and I know these tabloid guys are great because they're just doing my PR for me. Oh, he might have heard something or this and that. And it's like, you know my career. I'm doing everything prior to that. I put lotion on the body still to keep the skin healthy because no matter what happens.
Thank you! Right? Talk to these two men about lotion, please. They won't fucking do it.
I agree with you.
too
But
oily.
I talked to Rich Kaspari, and he and I did it since we were teenagers. I wear sunblock. You guys call it makeup. Whatever. Cool. I just played a 38-year-old kid in a movie that's Hollywood released, theaters, and Sundance.
Right.
And I'm playing a 38-year-old champion bodybuilder. And they were going to go to some other people for the role, and I said, go ahead, go for it. Go talk to them.
Yeah.
Come back to me when you're done.
Yep.
A week later, they come back and go, yeah, you're the guy.
Give us the quick skid routine. Just like, what do men need to do? Because like people always talk about how young you look, bro. What do guys need to be doing?
Wait.
You've got to do, but you got to do it early,
This
like
is how
your
he goes
age.
to sleep. The lotion on his face
Yeah,
is
I
like
cake
this.
I cake it on.
Does the mask? It comes
Twice.
out tight and it's like, oh,
That's a night cream.
that's daddy.
Night cream.
Let's go. Okay,
Do
yeah,
it.
good.
Because by the time you start seeing that there's a problem, it's too late. It's like, no, I don't care how ripped you are. And you guys have had some people on here that were a little older and stuff, but you can see that they're older because of the skin. And that's what I love about, they go, Michael Hearn's strong. Okay, but no, that's just it. That's all Michael Hearn is, strong. Well, strong, athletic, still move, can still tussle, can still do an acting role as a 30-year-old. That's kind of cool. To me, that's more impressive than, don't tell me I'm strong. There's stronger guys than me.
Yeah.
That's not a big thing to me. But saying, wow, you look healthy and you're still in this career that your first cover was at 1920 and you just got another cover. And the other thing about this is the picture on the product isn't from when I won the universe 30 years ago. It's of me today. And that's what I'm trying to tell these kids. Do you want to keep it for a lifetime, or you just want to be, you can do a supplement company and just use a photo from me competing 30 years ago, not me now.
Yeah, we don't live in the past.
Yep.
Yeah, we just live in the present.
I don't know.
Yeah,
The skin is great. The mind approach is great. Get a good partner, because I do think I got better over the last 10. And I think my thing was get somebody better than you that makes you ante up instead of somebody comfortable. And I know that's a tough thing for a youngster, because a youngster is, I just want some tits and ass and something hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people fall apart and start to gain weight when they have a kid. Like sometimes it's, what the female goes through. Sometimes it's because of having snack food around the house and stuff for the people.
But it goes for the guy too, right?
My kids have, my kids have, they got, a parent will say, we got some junk food around the house for the kids, and sometimes I eat it too.
I hear that too all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
But you don't have to. It doesn't have to be that way.
No.
Power Project family, if you're trying to increase your muscle mass, if you're trying to lose body fat, if you're trying to stick to your nutrition plan, if you're trying to get fit, pretty much if there's anything you're trying to do for your health, we know that sleep is the biggest determining factor to help you get from point A to point B. That's why we've been sleeping on 8 Sleep mattresses for probably more than 2 years now. And the main reason is the technology behind the Pod Pro. Now, the Pod Pro is like the Tesla of beds. It will change its temperature based off of how you're sleeping during the night. And if you have a partner that's sleeping on the other side, they can have their own temperature settings. We all sleep hot here, and I used to wake up in a puddle of my own sweat. Gross. That doesn't happen anymore because of the 8 Sleep mattress, and I've been getting the best sleep of my life. Now, if you don't want to replace your mattress, you can just get the Pod Pro cover, and you can put that over your current mattress to get all the benefits of 8 Sleep. But if you also need to replace your old nasty mattress, you can get the Pod Pro cover and the 8 Sleep mattress. Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, you guys got to head over to 8sleep.com/Power Project, and you guys will automatically receive $150 off of your order. Again, 8sleep.com/Power Project. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
You can change your mindset about stuff too, even just in your warm-ups. If you're supposed to squat for the day, like rather than just squatting with the bar on your back, you can think about trying to pull yourself down towards the ground. So maybe you can get a little bit more depth, or maybe the goal for the day is range of motion rather than weight.
Right.
And you can just, it just doesn't, you don't always have to have the same goals. And I think that's a lot of shifts that you made over the years that is probably keeping you interested and excited about what you're doing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like you said with squat, sometimes I do something called a Kang squat, because again, it's like a good morning into a squat. Right? It's like a weird.
What is the Kang squat?
Kang, it's like one of those weird things. It's like you do a good morning and then you sort of squat down and then you do the reverse.
Yeah, squat, good morning combo.
Yeah, weightlifters do a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is a fun one to do, and it's a fun way to test your mobility, especially with that combination. And so you can do it with a barbell. You can just do it with you could do the smaller little weights you can use rather than a big barbell.
So like the cambered bar thing?
I don't know what
it's the small looking bar.
Yeah, the small little ones that it's not as intimidating.
Oh, like a fixed, just a fixed bar, yeah.
Yeah. So that, and then this is almost something you can give people as a task to, like, when you get comfortable doing this, not a heavy weight, then you can see that your mobility is improving. And even things like the Cossack squat is something that I find a lot of people struggle with. It's something that's so basic for a lot of us who have the mobility. You'd be surprised how many people can't do it. But because it's a dynamic movement, I find that a lot of guys especially are more comfortable when you give them dynamic movements in form of mobility.
Yes.
They find that more interesting than the hold for 5 minutes kind of stretches. So I always find putting things like that in workouts, assisted Cossack squats, and then they go on to weights and stuff, makes it more enjoyable. So I always my mission is to try and find ways that makes especially the boring training more interesting. And then also to make people who do bodybuilding, that's why I do the cross lifter thing. What I do is, even with YouTube, I'll do a bodybuilding workout and then I'm like, right, I'll put 10 minutes of conditioning, just try that 10 minutes of conditioning. Yeah. And it's funny because I found that when I've just done a fully bodybuilding session and I don't add any of that, some people be like, oh, but where's the conditioning? I was waiting for the conditioning at the end. I was like, that's good, because now I'm getting people to open up to the more concept of being fit in terms of looking fit, but actually being fit. You know, having some form of cardiovascular, you know, fitness, and not just being, oh, I'm only here for aesthetics.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that can only take you so far for so long, you know, and then you get to that age where, you know, what else is there to do when you aren't really interested in aesthetics anymore, but you still love training. But now if you do the conditioning, that prepares you for, as you get older, you're not too worried about, oh, I won't be able to do the bicep curls anymore, which you still can. But you know how we all see it as we get older, we're supposed to slow down, and some people don't. I mean, some people don't look at it that way, but a lot of us do.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't want to do as much anymore. I want to slow down when I get older. For me, it's not, I don't want to slow down. I just want to adapt. You know, I might not be doing bodybuilding every day, but I might be, I'll go for a run. I'll go for a hike.
You mentioned that you would always try to put yourself in situations where people were better than you. So were you doing that like when you started training as a kid? Like, first off, when did you start training? And then also, how did training environments change the way you looked at your progression? Or did they, like, I guess the question I'm trying to get at here is, when you changed your training environment, did you automatically start to get better because of the people around you?
So I started training when I was 12, and I picked up a Muscle and Fitness magazine, and I immediately saw the pictures and said, this is what I want to do. I competed when I was 13. It was 1985.
After 1 year?
1985 was when I did my first show when I was 13 years old.
It's quick.
I was like, when I opened up the magazine, that was my goal. Like, I want to look like these guys. And I wasn't bullied, or I wasn't trying to impress girls. I just loved bodybuilding from the start. It had nothing to do with anything but that. So I was very passionate about it. And I trained at a gym that had a couple good bodybuilders. It was a small town, but for me, they were massive at the time. And then as I got older into my teenage years, there was a guy named John Perillo, who was a very well-known coach back in the day. And John invited me to start training down at his center in Cincinnati. And I give John a lot of credit too, because, you know, I was 19 years old and John brought me down there to train. I was going to college about a half hour away. So any chance I got, I would go down there and train. John had a coach that worked for him. His name was Mike Matson. And Mike absolutely destroyed me. He killed me. I don't think I've ever been as hard on any of my clients as Mike was on me. And to this day, I love him to death because of that, because of the expectations he put on me. So, you know, I started training at Perillo's. So I had somebody just from day one just pounding me and taught me the value of nutrition. And he in 1992, and I won all three of them with a perfect score as a 20-year-old. So I was beating all the veterans. And it was because of John and Mike. Specifically Mike working with me. So, you know, and then through the years, I trained at different gyms, and then things kind of started to change. You know, the gyms aren't quite the same now, but I still always had this, you know, I always kind of had this saying, like, you create your own environment. So it shouldn't matter what the person next to you is doing. You still got to bring it. So even when I was training at like California Fitness or whatever, I still worked hard. I still worked really hard. I never let my environment really bring me down. Now, having said that, I'll always take the awesome environment 10 times out of 10, but I didn't let it bring me down in the other environments. And they're not too many gyms are like that now, where you can just unleash. So anyways, that's kind of what it was like for me.
Do you remember a product that John Perillo had called Cap Tri?
Oh yeah. The MCT oil. Yeah.
Yep. MCT oil in like the mid 80s, right?
Yeah, he had a training manual and a nutrition manual. Those were like my Bibles. I took those everywhere I went.
He was a little bit of a low carb proponent, but mixing in a little bit of carbohydrates, I think even just around the workout, from what I remember.
Well, I can tell you the one thing he did, man, was he had an inordinate amount of vegetables in a diet.
Right.
And like my stomach couldn't handle all that fiber. Right. but John also had these Perillo bars.
Yeah.
And I love those Perillo bars. So I used to carb load on them before I did my show.
They were delicious.
So,
I remember them. Yeah, they had like maltodextrins in them, and it had MCT oil powder, and it had protein, which is like there was no protein bars back then. Wow.
yeah, oh, they were fantastic. Yeah.
We had Brad Schoenfeld on, and he came on and talked about.
He was here? Or
Oh no,
digitally?
we had him on Zoom. And we started talking about aspects of like the mind-muscle connection. And then I asked him something, but he mentioned how as an individual gets more experience in training and they get better mind-muscle connection over time, they might actually be able to get away with utilizing lesser volumes while still being able to make progress because their mind-muscle connection is better.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, how does that work? Because I've noticed that for myself, like with the, like, I can do lighter loads with a lot of movements that I used to in the past do heavier loads with, get sore, great stimulus, great progression, and I'm not having to work with this heavy of load.
Sure.
How does that work for people so they can understand? Because most people just want to just keep working with heavier and heavier and heavier weight, but that might bite you in the ass at some point.
Sure. I think there are two elements to it. One is by having a higher mind-muscle connection and practicing that. It's nothing like you get from the first time someone teaches you, you're like, I don't know, it feels like fucking the same. I'm actually weaker, fuck this. You practice connecting with your muscle, and all of a sudden, you may be able to preferentially recruit that muscle to help that movement earlier. Because, for example, like if you're doing, let's say, skull crusher or something, there's quite a bit of chest involvement, shoulder involvement, tricep involvement. And if you don't have a good mind-muscle connection, you can end up using a lot of chest and shoulder to propel the movement. And someone's like, hey, how are your triceps? They're good. I felt something. But if you really feel it out, a lot of times the fraction of the total force produced by the movement that your triceps are doing is higher because you're activating them volitionally more than you would. And then you just get more high quality work because they're on more of the time. The second way that happens is a good mind-muscle connection can subtly influence your technique so that you use better technique. So for example, if you're really connected to your pecs and you know when they're on, if you bench and your shoulder blades are out like this, you're like, yeah, okay, I can feel my pecs. But let's say one day you slightly let your scapulae drop back and now you get the stretch, like, holy shit. And you look it up and then after a while you're arching and tracking your power lifter and it destroys your fucking pecs every time. And someone would be like, well, do you know, like, is that biomechanically better? You're like, I don't fucking know. All I can tell you is when I do it this way, my pecs are on fire. And if you have no mind-muscle connection, that whole, like, I feel my pecs working properly, that's not even a thing you can say, because someone could be like, how you're, you know, can you imagine, like, someone does a world record squat and they walk off the platform, you're like, how'd your quads feel? They're like, what? I don't know.
Yeah.
I got the fucking squat. That's all I give a shit about. But, you know, if you can actually feel the pecs working in better technique, then mind-muscle connection is a really cool tool, especially if you know the technique decently to start with. Having a mind-muscle connection can reinforce where that good technique groove is. It's like if you're driving a race car or some shit, and yeah, you can see the road, but every time you get off the track a little, the bumper strip thing, it does that. You're like, oop, too far.
Yeah.
And that's what mind-muscle connection can help you do in training if you sort of know how to read the sounds of the prairie or whatever.
A lot of bodybuilding stuff. We were talking about how maybe some bodybuilders aren't the smartest maybe to follow all the way through on a lot of the different things that they do. But I always find it really interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I always find it interesting that so many things seem to go back to bodybuilding. Somebody talks about a diet and they're like, oh, you can do this diet, you can do that diet, you can do a keto diet, or you can do if it fits your macros. But ultimately, when people are trying to get in shape, it comes down to you got to kind of follow a bodybuilding style diet when someone's trying to get like shredded. And same thing with stuff in the gym. You know, somebody might say, oh, I like doing kettlebell, I like doing full body, I like doing these things. But again, it kind of seems like if you're trying for hypertrophy and you're trying to be well built and you're trying to maximize your time in doing that, then kettlebell snatches and some of these movements, while they might have a lot of utility, they might be great movements, they might kind of overload the whole body. You're hearing more people kind of get into full body workouts and things of that nature. But if you're trying to be jacked, I think a lot of times it starts to narrate the information back to bodybuilding.
That's super well put. I completely agree. And I'll add something on if it's okay. Is it
Absolutely.
Okay? No. Next subject. I think a lot of people are interested in having their physique look a certain way.
Yeah.
And they say a lot of things that are sometimes also true that they have as goals. Like, I want to be more athletic, etc. I want to have fun. And sometimes they say things like that that are not true at all. And they actually just want a really nice body. So, you know, if you had some kind of magic pill that just gave you a shredded, let's set a standard here, fellas. Brad Pitt in Fight Club, the ultimate physique to ever walk the earth. Flex Wheeler, never heard of him. Brad Pitt, 155 pounds, cigarette addict. Do you guys know that's the thing? Like the Brad Pitt Fight Club bodies. Like, I want to look like that. Like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. Heroin's a hell of a drug, fellas. JK. If you could have a magic pill that just gave you an amazing body, a lot of people would be like, yeah, the gym. Fuck that. Because that's really what they want. And if you have a lifting technique for them that helps them maximize how their body looks, a lot of what they said about how strong they wanted to get or whatever turns out to be maybe not as true as they said before. They just really want to look good naked. Oh, there it is. So they really just want to look good naked. And how do you end up doing that? Who's the best, awkward way to say it, who are the people that have made the most serious attempt to look a certain way naked in the world? Bodybuilders.
Yeah.
And so they're gonna know a lot of stuff, because at the end of the day, you can say, well, I just do CrossFit or I just do kettlebells. But like, yeah, you kind of want to look fucking legit. And then whatever way you do CrossFit and kettlebells maybe can be modified or supplemented by some bodybuilding stuff, including some dieting from bodybuilding. And then you get to looking like you actually wanted to look. That's like, RP, the whole company we have or whatever. That's one of our big philosophies, is meeting people where they are and being honest with them. We're like, do you want to look better? They're like, yes. Like, sweet, here's a program and here's how to change it, etc. We're not trying to be like, you're going to have health and strength and don't worry about how you look. Like, no, I know you're worried about how you look, but we can help with that shit.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that stuff comes back with bodybuilding being effective, because at the end of the day, people can say like, well, I'm just into kettlebells. I don't care about how I look. Please. Sure you do.
I think that's a kind of missing element for a lot of beginners, is they don't realize, okay, it does say to do 275 pounds, but if 275 is moving like shit, there's really, as far as I'm aware, there's no coaches that want your reps to look like shit.
Yeah.
They don't want your set of 5 with 275 to be looking like all single rep maxes where you're all hunched over in a squat or something like that. You want the exercises to look pretty clean. And if someone's doing a 5x5 or 3x5 or 3 sets of 3, it's the last couple of reps of the last couple of sets that might be a little bit like where we're talking about, it's starting to get a little sketchy, right?
Yeah. And back to your point earlier, like when I mentioned with my own training, if I'm pushing that hard on the bench press, the reps are going to look pretty shitty. If I'm pushing that hard on the squat or deadlift, I can probably hold good technique. So that's why I have kind of different phases to what I'm doing.
And we brought Taylor in specifically because he has not eaten a carb in the last, how long has it been?
Like an hour.
It's bad. I'm kind of worried. How do you guys eat? Because I know that you guys are throwing down some carbs. And I know you guys like want to be fucking big and strong. It's important. And we talk about this a lot on this show, and I talk about it often. But as much as I talk about it, I did write a book called The War on Carbs. So everyone's like, he's all keto. And that I'm not in favor of carbs. But obviously they have their place.
I'll be honest, if I wasn't training for bodybuilding and I just wanted to look good and feel good, I'd be doing that, man. I'd probably have some carbs around my training because I like carbs. They're tasty. But at the same time, like, I feel better. I have more energy the lower my carbs are.
Really?
Absolutely. 100%. The problem is that doesn't work too good for bodybuilding. When you're trying to add a lot of size, especially for bodybuilding, where you want to have that, kind of like round, full look to your muscles, that's all that glycogen that you're pushing in there. So for me, carbs are the main source of calories in my diet. And it's not comfortable, but at the same time, that's kind of part of the game, right? Like, if it was comfortable, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it.
Right. What about for you?
I was actually going to say, like, when I'm injured or off season, stuff like that, it's pretty much, it's not no carbs, but it's just like intra-workout carbs, and then just pretty much kind of what you promote. Like, I call it like adjusted keto or modified keto.
Right.
But I kind of think of the carbs like a supplement where you're only going to take in as much as justified by the training and the goal.
We say that all the time.
Yeah, that's how I look at it too.
Yeah.
But even for you, training for strongman, it's important after the strongman competition is over for you to drop some LBs, right? Drop a little bit of weight, because there's just no good reason to be that large for that long. Right?
I do intend, like, part of my prep every time I compete in strongman is to have an extra 10 to 20 pounds, even if it's just to hook it on my belly.
Right.
So yeah, that typically drops off every time after a show, with the goal of kind of maintaining the strength that I gained from that cycle.
Right.